Joel here from the Board Game Mechanics. Today I'm taking a look at my most misstated name of a game ever, the Palace of Mad King Ludwig. Not palaces. I think I've called it palaces way more than I've called it the palace. I guess probably because of castles. Anyway, let's get a look at it now.
Okay, so we're going to go over the components here first real quick. We have basically different kinds of room tiles. There are 15 activity rooms, 14 downstairs tiles, 12 food room tiles, 16 living room tiles, 12 sleeping room tiles, 12 utility room tiles, 10 stair tiles, 15 hallway tiles, which are different than these tiles over here because they have a specific use. They're free to put down, things like that. We also have favor tiles. These are public favors. Then we're also going to have some private favors that we're going to have on our boards. These favors are going to be ways that we can earn some more points. We have moat tiles. There's lots of these moat tiles. They're going to be all around the edge of the board here. And we're going to use those as kind of a timing mechanism to know when the game's going to finish. We have a just ton of these swans up here that are just double-sided, colored on both sides. A whole big bank of those. At the heart of this game, we're going to be collecting these swans to make sets. Then we have these secret swans here that go on this bridge that are going to be kind of like a way to see if you have more swans than somebody else, or kind of just keep things a little bit more full of intrigue and ambiguous. For setup, we're going to make all these piles of tiles similar. Then we're going to go ahead and fill up this first row of tiles here. We're going to place 3 hallway tiles on the board, and then we're going to stack up the rest of the hallway tiles there, the stair tiles there. We're going to shuffle up the favor tiles, put 4 of them face up, make stacks of moats, make a bank of the swans and the secret swans, and we're set up and we're ready to play. In addition to the main board setup, everyone's going to get their own personal player board. These are kind of interesting because they have these notches on the side, which we'll talk about here in a second. But then also you have your little player markers that are going to be used as you lay room tiles down to indicate which rooms that you have placed down and to keep track of how many rooms you've kind of like planned or started on your player board. It's going to be just tons of ways to score points in this game. It's a true point salad type game. But let's get right in now to the actual gameplay and what we can do on our turn. So basically you're going to take one of these tiles here and place a room down, following the room requirements or the room costs, and then placing it based on making it a legal placement. The cost of these rooms are at the bottom here. So if you have your very first, this is the most expensive room. It's going to cost you 2 swans. And these both are going to cost 2 swans, but then it's like kind of like similar to other Ted Allspot games, where as this slides down, these are going to, as rooms get picked, these are going to slide down and become cheaper. So if you wait a while, these rooms will become more affordable for you to get. Let's take a look at the anatomy of a room tile now. So this is a picture of a purple type room, and it has the reward in the upper left-hand corner for completing the room. So for this one, if you complete the room, you would get swans equal to the entryways there. So you'd get 3 green swans for this room. It also has the room type. So this is like a living space. That fireplace symbol, I think, means it's a living space. And you would move up your icon when you place this room based on that. And then it has these entryways with swans on them of different colors. So those entryways are kind of important as well. So when placing a tile, we'll use our sitting room as our example again. You just have to place it so there's an entryway that's accessible to that room. This would be an illegal placement because it's not connected to an entryway. This would be a legal placement. This would be a legal placement. But when you match up the rooms, it gives you a benefit. So there's a benefit for you when the swan colors match when the room gets completed. And I would also take one of my markers and put it white side up. Then as we built rooms around this and we completed it, we would flip this over and it would go face down, which indicates the room is completed, and I would get the benefit on the top there. And that's a good way to mark that the rooms are completed for scoring and things like that at the end of the game. Just an easy, quick reference to do that. Hallways you can place, stairways you can place. The cost associated with that isn't necessarily swans. The cost associated with that is you have to ditch a room tile out of this row here, and basically it's going to keep advancing the game. When we replace rooms in the array of rooms, they slide over, and then we refill the rooms up from the piles of tiles here. Once we exhaust a pile and this moat symbol shows up, we start putting moats down onto the board. So this would be, I place one moat tile. It has to be orthogonally adjacent to the existing moats and then connected to the palace. So eventually we're going to start putting out more than one moat tile. And you basically fill in inlets first. So that's the way that you could be diagonal. But you fill in your inlets and then you keep going orthogonally so that everything's connected. Once the moat fully encapsulates the palace, then the game is over. Another way the game could end is if we exhaust the tiles. So if we exhaust certain tiles, the game would end. A final way the game could end too would be if all the moat tiles were depleted. So that would be a crazy game if we were able to go through all these moat tiles because there's just a lot of them. Then the game ends. We'll talk about scoring here in a second, but before that I want to talk about these player boards. All right, we're going to take a quick look here at the player boards. The player boards are going to have a track that's going to indicate how many rooms we've placed, not completed, and we're going to keep adjusting that. I think you could either do it one of two ways. You could slide a marker over to keep track of it, or you could place more markers on to indicate that you placed that type of a room in there. That's going to give you like swans and then in-game scoring. You also are going to get some in-game scoring by completing columns by doing that. So I think by putting more on there, it's going to make it simpler for scoring. But if you were running low on your markers, it would be possible to slide them over. The other thing too is that for an action in this game, you can pay 3 swans and you take a favor tile. When you take a favor tile, you're going to place the favor tile in their square. It's going to give you a nice in-game scoring thing that happens for you. However, if you do favors, you're going to sacrifice the benefit on the board here. If you place a room in, it's going to go in and it's going to touch that favor. And when the favor is touching the room tile, you know that you got it. So rooms give you these benefits. Favors don't. Favors just give you scoring things that you can get. So this is basically what these powers are going to do. If you place a room in these spots, so that the corner's in there, rooms, this gives you swan discounts when you put other rooms in. This one lets you move moat tiles. These are all for the game end. And again, if you had this in there so it's, touching that benefit, you would get it. This would give you 3 swans at the end of the game. Really useful for completing sets that you're going to use for scoring. This one would say if I, had this here and I got that benefit, it would say that if there's ties on favors, I would win them or I would score them. This one's just going to give you 10 points, just straight give you 10 points if you do that. So in-game scoring, we'll get to in a second. But now I think we're going to go ahead and do a time lapse of a play of this game so you can see how the board develops and get a sense of this. And then once we do our in-game scoring, we'll kind of cover how that worked. So our palace is completed now, and we are going to go ahead and do some scoring. The palace completed because, as you can see, the moat totally encapsulated the palace. And it kind of looks neat as it develops and becomes something different. So I'm going to go over final scoring here real quick and just show you how ours scored. So for final scoring, we have several things we're going to score. This symbol up here is basically indicating that we're going to score the things that are on our player board that would give us points. So any objectives on the player boards that we would have completed. So here's a look at my player board as it ended the game. And you can see that I only completed 1 column for 10 points, but then I also got the room tile in the benefit spot. So I got an additional 10 points, so 20 points total. And that's how I would get points on the player board. The next thing that scores is we're going to score 3 points for each room connected to our stairwells down. So Luke did best on this. He was the blue player. You can see that he had several rooms connected to his down stairwell, and he scored some points for that. Then we score 3 points per whatever the utility room says for completed utility rooms. I think that we all did about the same on that. Those seem really powerful during the game, but then at the end of the game scoring, they are a big chunk of points, but they weren't the biggest score. The Swans are still going to score more than that, I think, at the end of the game usually. Then you're also going to score 7 points for basically any completed recreation room or music room, however you want to call that. One other quick thing about the utility rooms, I think they balance because there's usually only one doorway on them. So you're only ever going to get one swan out of that. You're going to complete a room right away, and it's not going to give you ongoing swan benefits. So that's, I think, how that balances a little bit. It's like you're kind of almost limiting yourself a little bit by not having more connections to other rooms. Then you're going to look at your sets of swans. You're going to total those up. Your sets of swans are going to score, a set of 5 is going to score you, basically it's going to score you 10 points. A set of 4 is going to score you 7 points. A set of 3 will score you 4 points. A pair is going to get you 2. And individual swans are going to get you 1. I don't know why they just didn't say pairs and ones are each worth 1 apiece, but I guess that makes it a little simpler for scoring. The final thing you're going to score is favors. So we've got our public favors up there that we scored, and then we have our private favors that we have. So at the end of the game, you're going to have a scratched up notepad like this. And on this game, my wife slaughtered us. She was the yellow player, the key player in this game, and she did really, really well on her swans. She was able to collect lots of sets of swans, and she did really well in her utility rooms and scored a lot of points there in order to beat us. And that's roughly how you score the game, how you play the game. I hope this gives you a sense or an overview of the game. I don't know that you're going to have completely a full rules explanation from that, but I think that's a good start for you.
So that's the Palace of Mad King Ludwig. I hope you guys have a sense of the game now, at least, because I'm going to talk about it and what I thought about it. The art in this game is super fun. It's just very colorful. When it's on the table, you feel like you're looking at blueprints or something cool. It's just fun. You really feel like you're designing a house kind of thing. You feel like you're building something. It's really fun to look at that art. It's really just the art is unique enough, and you get a sense of like these are the rooms, you know. So I think that's really fun. It's like Castles of Mad King Ludwig too, you know, the art, and that's really fun. It's like in between two castles of Mad King Ludwig. It's got that same sense of art, like that just depth and feel of like you could go visit this spot. So the art's really fun in this game. This game's really simple to learn, but it has meaningful choices inside of it. So basically at the heart of the game, you're laying a tile down and then getting some kind of benefit from it. But then which tile you pick and where you place it and what benefits you want, and then the strategy that goes within that is kind of a lot to really figure out. And so while you could play this game at probably a really young age, probably 8-year-olds could play it, they may not be able to understand or balance all the different ideas of scoring that you're trying to do. People who are brand new gamers could play this game technically, but they may be overwhelmed with all the ideas and strategies that you could possibly use in this game. So it's really simple to learn, but then you have these deep, meaningful choices too, which are going to keep people who are a little maybe more interested in like heavier games or more experienced gamers involved in this game. I think those people who just that I mentioned that might not be super competitive are still going to want to play this game. They just may not win, or at least not on the first try. But it's a good way to learn some mechanics into a game, like set collection, tile laying, things like that, in a pretty simple package. And so I don't mean that. I mean that as a strength. I mean just you can teach this game really quickly, but then there's a lot of games still there. So the sense of accomplishment you get from this game too is really great. So when this game's done and on the table and you're looking at it and you're going, whoa, look at this. That's really cool. That's really cool, really great. I just really like that it feels like you built something. It has that same feeling of I finished a puzzle almost. You look at it on the table and you don't want to tear it down for a while because it's just like, wow, this is a unique kind of cool thing that we built kind of collaboratively almost. So that's the strength of the game as well, that sense of like you finish something. The ease of access I already talked about. This is a game that I think people could get on the table a lot. Gamers are going to enjoy this game because there's so many different strategies and ways to score points. It's got that point salad thing going on for it, which like more traditional, heavier gamers enjoy. They like being able to say, I'm going to do something different than other people and try that. I think that brand new gamers or young gamers or even, you know, elderly gamers or something, I think are all going to be able to play this game as well. It's not going to overwhelm people very much. So there's this ease of access, but then just this idea that it's going to get on the table pretty often because the art's really nice in it. And there's just a lot of different groups that could play this game. So rock solid on that. The drawbacks on this, the only real drawback I see on this game is scoring is difficult. So if you are going to play this game, there needs to be somebody in this group who's really studied it and knows how the scoring works and kind of can talk to people about that and then be available and do the scoring at the end of the game, because it's a little fiddly. You have to hunt down rooms and stuff to kind of remember what you're getting points for. You have to figure out sets of swans. You have to figure out how your favors are going to work. There's a lot of things to score at the end of this game, which comes with those point salads type of games, period. It's just inherent. But this one, you have to do some hunting a little bit too. So, and then the bookkeeping piece of this too is the other part, and that kind of relates to this. But it's like when you're playing the game, there's certain things that have to happen as like a series of events, and if you don't remember those, you can get really behind. So when you lay a room tile down, you get so excited you laid the room tile down, and you want to collect your swans or get whatever benefit if you completed a room done, that you sometimes might forget to put your player marker on your player board, or you might sometimes forget to grab moat tiles and put moat tiles down. So there's just things that you have to remember to do. And if you forget, you can get behind and it can get sloppy. So just having someone that's diligent with that bookkeeping too, or just making sure that you're able to remember all the steps and complete your turn, is going to be something in this game to remember as well. But overall, I think there's way more highlights than there are drawbacks in this game. So let's go ahead and break this down. Let's take a look at some numerical values on this, and kind of here at the Board Game Mechanics, we like to not just say we like this game, we don't like this game. We like to say here's some categorizations and why we rated it what we rated it. Accessibility. I'm going to say most everybody can play this game. I've talked about this already. It's going to have a lot of opportunities to get on the table because it's got that point salad thing for the heavier gamers, but it's pretty easy to teach for like lighter gamers. And it's interesting looking that enough people are going to be like, hey, what is that game? That they want to play it. So I think it's going to get to the table a lot, which is a big deal. Like nobody wants to own a game you can't get on the table. So this one you can, I think, because it has a lot of crowds it could play with, and it has a lot of appeal to a lot of crowds. The theme, I don't think anyone's going to object to this theme. People might be a little uninterested in it, but I don't think it's objectionable. I'm going to say all in the theme. Now, that said, I know like there's always one person, always everywhere, that is like, oh, that theme, I can't be bothered. So, I mean, you're going to find that person just because there is that person, but for like a practical sense, everybody will be cool with this game and want to play it, I think. The fun on this game, a 4 out of 5. I really like this game. It's very fun overall. I think there's wackier games. There's games that make me have more fun than this one, but this is a good balance of having fun, being social, and like a sense of accomplishment that you're building something. You know what I mean? So like productivity almost is a feeling that you get from it. So it is fun, but the other feelings you get from it too, complemented enough that I think it's good. That you do feel productive and you do feel like you're being social. And the other aspect of this game I haven't really talked about is like there's this other piece of the game where it's like you're trying to play the other players, not the game totally. So when you place your rooms, you try and figure out, you want people to connect onto your rooms so that you get benefits. So you're trying to figure out which way do you think these people want to build? What colors do you think they want that you're going to get them to hook up to yours? And then you don't want them to block off things because you want your rooms to complete. So basically you're trying to figure out the other players and work with them a little bit, but it's definitely not a co-op game, but you are working with the other players. So that's kind of neat. The replayability of this game, I think you're going to see different sets of tiles come out every time. I think you're going to see them come out in different orders for sure. You're going to see different favors come up all the time. So the replayability is pretty high on this. The core mechanic's going to get kind of samey maybe eventually, but you're going to see new things come out in this game. So overall, it's above average. 4 out of 5 for both these ratings, well above average, really good. The design and the art, I didn't give a 5 out of 5 because it's just like, I have a hard time with a couple things. The colors don't match the player boards exactly perfectly on like a couple of room categories. And then the symbols are kind of hard to find. Now, I don't know how you would fix that, and that's why I didn't take much off. But it is a thing that I want to acknowledge, that sometimes it's hard to find the symbols on the rooms. It's sometimes hard to like look across the table to see what these rooms do or what their names are. And that's a hard thing in this game, but I think they've balanced it as best they can, because this game inherently by design is going to have some of that, because there's just the way the rooms are oriented differently, and the way how like it gets big, the game just gets very big. You couldn't make the tiles bigger because it would just be huge. And then the symbols have to be fairly small because the tiles are fairly small. So I think inherently, like some of the design elements on this game are going to be difficult and challenging, and I think they handled it fairly well. But I want to acknowledge that a little bit. The art in this game is fantastic though, and you feel like a depth in that art, like you're present in this palace. It's kind of the same as like in Castles of Mackie and Ludwig. It's kind of the same as like Between Two Castles of Mackie and Ludwig. So I feel like there's this depth in this art and this just coziness, and that you want to just go visit this place you're building. So I did give it a 4.5 out of 5. So this game, scoring well above average on all 3 of those categories. Where do I land on this game as far as our wrench rating goes? Well, I give it a 4 out of 5 wrench rating, which is a rock solid game. This is going to be a game that I'm going to suggest somewhere around 60-70% of people would really benefit from having in their collection and really enjoy if you're looking at a game like this. I think this is going to be just a game that I would say is worth having around. If you already own Ted Alspach's other tile laying games and you love them, then I would say that this is a game for you because it's different. But it's gonna be a change of pace from those games, but it's also gonna be not familiar, but it's gonna have some of the similar feelings to it, especially Castles probably. But it's very different. The things that Castles and Palace have in common are this: you're laying down rooms in order to gain a benefit of some kind. Beyond that, they're very different. So there's set collection stuff going on in this game that doesn't happen in the other game. There's not the odd shapes. There's no auction kind of elements in this game. So this game, I don't know that I would call it lighter. I think it's actually probably a little heavier than Castles, but it's very different for sure. So if you really love those 2 games and you want more, this is a more in that it is different, but it has a feel of I'm building a structure, and there's fun art, and it's tile placement. So there are some commonalities, but it's enough different that I think it's worth a change. If you don't own those games and you want to own like a tile laying type, build a structure or a city kind of game, I would say this one is as good a pick as those other 2. I would say maybe take a look at those games first and say which one of these 3 is the right one for me. But they're all 3, I think, probably amongst some of the better tile laying games. And I would say right now I own a copy of Carcassonne. I'm not sure why. I don't like that game compared to those other games. This game definitely, it doesn't quite feel the same as Carcassonne, but if you ask me to play a tile laying game, I'm playing this one over Carcassonne every time. So, I don't know. That's just my personal opinion, and I don't care for Carcassonne that much, but this one's definitely a better version of a tile laying game for me. I respect Carcassonne. It was like kind of the first, and we're building on that foundation, but this is the next step in a building beyond it. I would also say that if you are looking at a tile laying game and you're looking at the Bezier stuff, they're all good, but just give this one a little maybe special consideration because there's not a lot of hype about this one, I don't feel at this point, and people haven't talked about this one as much. It's not been around as long, so this is one that might build momentum over time, but it's definitely good, and I've played all the games, and I think this one is not behind the others. I think it's right there with them. I'm not exactly sure today how I would rank them, which one's my first, second, and third favorite, but they're close. So at any rate, I'm going to say this is a 4 out of 5 wrench rated family game, and it's a heavier family game too because it is that point salad kind of thing, but like it's a family weight game, and I think that this is something that you could enjoy with the family. So anyway, I've been Joel, and this is the Board Game Mechanics, and keep gaming.